Tennessee is going to stay there at number 1. I had them trading out in that first mock draft. But here we go. Tennessee, they need a quarterback. I'm going to go with Cam Ward from Miami. After the combine and throughout this process, Cam Ward has continued to impress. I think his top end is very good. You guys know that I've loved Cam for a long time, even back to his time at Washington State. It was a great signing for Miami when they were able to get him. And he's just got enough gunslinger in him to really go out there and take a bad team and improve them, because he's going to be willing to take chances. He's going to be willing to go out there and go put it on the line. They've bulked up their offensive line in free agency. They signed Dan Moore from Pittsburgh. And if you're the Titans, you're not going to go anywhere unless you figure out quarterback. And so Cam Ward is going to be my guy. They're at number 1 to the Titans. Let's go to number 2. The Browns now signing Myles Garrett to an extension. I would have 1,000 times out of 1,000 placed Abdul Carter here, thinking that Myles Garrett was going to be somewhere else. But now that he's going to be in Cleveland, they can continue to bolster the roster. So because they've got Garrett, now I'm looking in other position groups, and obviously they can address a lot of different things. But I don't know if you can pass up Travis Hunter right here at number 2. Travis can improve both sides of the ball, and there's really been no player that you can say that about ever in the history of this draft, and he can tangibly improve both sides of the ball. I believe that he's going to be a great corner in the National Football League. I think he can be a top 5 corner in the National Football League. What makes him so special is he can also then couple that with being I think, a number 3 slot style wide receiver. And because he would be like a number 3, a slot style, and maybe not in on every single play and every position group, then you're going to minimize his snaps just that way. Therefore, he's going to be impacting both sides of the ball at the NFL level, very similar to what he did for Colorado en route to the Heisman Trophy. I just don't think you can pass him up there. So Travis Hunter improving both sides of the ball for the Browns at number 2. Number 3, the relationship there with New York and the Sanders and Shedeur specifically, I think is strong. Now, I'm going to have Shedeur going to New York. And here's the deal. They have flown out to Colorado several times, even going back to the season in the fall, to scout, meet with, and get to know Shedeur to a much deeper level. I really like Shedeur's game, okay? I know that he has taken some arrows in this process, and guess what? It is as old as time that we get a polarizing player because someone doesn't like him or people don't like his brashness or whatever it is. In this case, it's because of the name on his back, and his dad happens to be the head coach at Colorado and happens to be, I would say, like the most, I don't want to say like showy, but Deion was the first of what has now become a showman. And he was probably, and probably still is, the greatest showman in the history of sports. And so Shedeur is catching the ire of people because of that. That's why everyone is attacking his draft stock. And guess what? I think it's so lazy and it's so unfair for all of these articles. And again, every single year you take the most polarizing player in the draft process, and typically it's a quarterback, but sometimes it can be somebody else. But you're going to get the rinse and repeat articles about like, well, some teams didn't like him at the combine in their meetings. And it's like, oh my gosh, it is the laziest article out there. And unfortunately, Shedeur is kind of the target of some of those articles and sentiments as of late. You know how I feel about him. I believe that he can be surgical when he is protected. He can be a magician when he is not. Not many guys can do that. And he can be productive because of it. Last thing I will say with Shedeur is, Colorado was a one-win team. They were terrible for 2 decades. And when I say terrible, I mean like terrible. They had one winning football season in 2 decades before Shedeur Sanders got there. And yes, you can give a lot of credit to Deion, and certainly as a head coach, you can command a lot of credit. You can give a lot of credit to the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, but he didn't have the football in his hands on every single play. Do you know the reason Colorado improved so drastically and so quickly? Shedeur Sanders. And now I believe that he can do the same in the NFL for his next franchise, and I believe that franchise is going to be the New York Giants. At number 4, if this plays out because of the needs up there and all of a sudden you might be thinking to yourself, like, there's no way Abdul Carter would fall this far. Well, you know who's going to love that? New England. And so I've got Abdul Carter going to New England. I think they would run to the podium. I think that would be a terrific selection for them. What a great scenario to have him sitting there at number 4. They've been super active in free agency in Mike Vrabel's first offseason, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They can then further build up that defensive side with Abdul Carter. I know that the offensive line still has issues here, but I got to be honest, there's no way that they would be taking an offensive lineman if Abdul Carter was on the board. So a lot of this is just like, hey, he's too good to leave there at 4. They've still got an early second. They've got 2/3. They can address some of those offensive needs later in the draft. Okay, this is not the only pick that you get in order to improve your team. And Abdul Carter, this guy is phenomenal. I loved covering him. This guy, he's been an off-the-ball linebacker. He's been an edge player. They moved him all over the place in Tom Allen's defense last year at Penn State. He was very effective and disruptive, and I think he will be again when he gets to the National Football League. That takes us to number 5. Jacksonville. They were last in the NFL in pass defense and takeaways last year. They went out and signed Jordan Lewis from the Cowboys. So he can occupy kind of the slot there, and now they can get their lockdown corner on the outside. That lockdown corner, in my estimation, is Will Johnson. Will Johnson, I'm really not frustrated, but it's like, it sucks that we didn't get to see him for a full year last year at Michigan because of the turf toe injury that he was battling through. Dude can play, man. He is excellent. He's got great ball skills from the time he stepped foot on the campus in Ann Arbor. He was terrific and one of their, if not the best cover guys on the outside. He's tough. You can't play in that defense unless you will rally up and make tackles and stick your nose in there. Ever since he was young, he could make plays on the football, which he did. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing the interception that he made against Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. A lot of those picks he's taken back for 6. In fact, 9 interceptions, 3 of those pick 6s in his 3 seasons in college football. The incredible interception, not this last season, but the year before, right in front of Marvin Harrison when Ohio State was there. Will Johnson is perfect for them right there at 5. That brings us to Vegas. Okay, so Vegas is interesting in my estimation. I think right here, in particular because they went out and got Geno Smith, I think that they can look at best player available. And they're also looking at a division now where Patrick Mahomes is sitting there and Justin Herbert is sitting there. And to a lesser degree, but maybe, on the up and come is Bo Nix and Denver. These quarterback-led kind of offensive teams, even though Denver had a good defense. And so now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, boy, wouldn't they watch the Super Bowl and they would watch what the Eagles did and they would think to themselves, like, that's a great blueprint for us in division, not just against Patrick Mahomes, but the other quarterbacks that we've got to beat and play twice a year. And so Mason Graham is sitting there and available at number 6. You've got your quarterback in Geno Smith, and you can continue to bolster what is an already strong defensive line. So you've got Max Crosby on the edge, Christian Wilkins on the interior, and now all of a sudden you can put Mason Graham in there, and all of a sudden you become, I think at least, the most disruptive defensive line in football. And that's, I think, what you need to go out and beat Patrick Mahomes. Mason Graham is an absolute man-child. I think he's an excellent player. I don't think that there has been a defensive tackle quite like him in a long time come out, equally good against the run and the ability to disrupt and what I would call like blow up blocks. He's a block destroyer, and he can blow up blocks and get to the quarterback. He's excellent, and I like him right there at 6 with Vegas. So the Raiders get their guy in the middle. All right, the Jets. Olu Fashanu from last year's draft, and he played left tackle and right tackle last year. Okay, so where are you going to go if you're the Jets? You can pick up another first-round offensive lineman. I think that would probably be the way to go. There are concerns, I think, rightly so, about some of the depth of offensive linemen in this draft, but Will Campbell from LSU is a really good player, and I'm not as concerned with his arm length like some of the people coming out of the combine. So for me, I've got the Jets taking Will Campbell there. Again, the arm length is, I mean, I get it, but he was excellent at LSU. So there are times when you have to watch the tape and you're like, if that didn't show up and it wasn't a concern for me on the tape, I'm not going to just let a measurement, show up all of a sudden at the combine and scare me off. So Will Campbell to the Jets, they're at 7. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers had the worst scoring defense in the league. I think they've got to address the defensive side of the ball, and it's a strong defensive draft. Good edge rushers, really good defensive tackles, some good linebackers in there. And I'm looking at Jaylen Walker, and I think Jaylen Walker fits what Carolina needs. Again, worst scoring defense in the league last year. Walker is kind of a do-it-all linebacker, so he's not going to be position specific. He can play inside and make tackles, but he's also explosive off the edge. And again, if you're looking at modern defenses, second-level players have to be kind of hybrid-style players. That's exactly what Jaylen Walker is. I'm a big fan of Jaylen Walker, and I think he could improve Carolina right away. So Carolina takes the Georgia linebacker, Jaylen Walker. That moves us to New Orleans at number 9, all right, as we're kind of rounding out the top 10. Mykel Williams had an incredible pro day, edge player from Georgia. He was, 260 pounds. He's 6'5". He runs a 4.7 340 at the pro day. The only reason Mykel Williams didn't have a better year is he had some nagging injuries, an ankle more specifically. I think he could have had a huge year. The Saints defense needs help. They were 30th in the league in total defense a year ago. The roster needs playmakers. I think Mykel Williams fits that mold. So I'm going back-to-back Georgia defenders right there, and Williams goes to the Saints. Bears at 10. Now, I think this is an interesting pick because they are really close to having a really solid roster. You look at this and you're like, okay, there's not a ton of needs with Chicago. They're going to have a ton of picks, right? So they're going to continue to bolster. They've got 2 picks early in the second round that they're going to continue to add, I think, then on the offensive side. And I think that you can still add offense right here. And I think that you can go offensive line. Bolstering the offensive line is important. Ben Johnson comes in as their new head coach from the Lions, and they're going to need, I think, to transform their offensive line so that they can properly evaluate Caleb Williams and just say, like, okay, let's give him every tool necessary to go out and succeed. And if he doesn't, then we can move on if we need to. But I do think he will. They've already got DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. They've got all these guys there. Now, protect your quarterback, allow him to reach his full potential, and you've got something. You can put Banks at left tackle, Kelvin Banks, the left tackle. That's where I'm going. You can put former first-round pick from 2 years ago, Darnell Wright, at right tackle. So Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas, is the pick for me for Chicago. I like this a lot. It allows them more depth. Again, they've got more picks early in the second. They can go anywhere they want right there. And Chicago really should be a lot better here in the next couple of years. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you like this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.